Hello everyone, this is Sam from Language Atlas. In this video I'm going to show you the French A1 Anki deck. I will focus on three things. The first is I will show you the course content of the French A1 Anki deck. The second is I will give you some practical examples of the decks inside of the larger French A1 Anki deck. And finally, I'll show you some brief editing options. So without further ado, let's get started. Go to whatever your French A1 Anki deck is and double click on it. This ensures that Anki can open it. Click on close, click on no, and then you go to Anki. And as you can see, French A1 has successfully been imported to Anki. I'll briefly close this so you can see it's the only deck. And you can see that inside it there are some smaller subdecks. I'm going to minimize them and then we can get started. So, first point is the course content. As you can see that there are some smaller subdecks inside of them. I will briefly skip this one, but I will get back to it a bit later. I'd like to get started with the first subdeck, which is the French A1 adjectives and adverbs. Now in this deck we talk about, as the name suggests, the adjectives and the adverbs for French A1. We will talk about how to make adjectives feminine, how to make them plural, how to use irregular feminine or irregular plural adjectives, but also how to form adverbs and much more. Then we go to the second one, which is the French articles and nouns. We look at the articles that you need to know for French A1 as well as the nouns, how to contract articles, how to say the, how to say a, how to talk about the parts of the body, the fact that they need definite articles, but also we talk about nouns, how to make nouns plural in French, or how to identify gender of nouns, which is something that I think a lot of people want to learn. Then we look at French A1 idioms. We have general idioms. These are a bit more general, a bit more broad. How to tell time, how to use numbers, or how to talk about the French calendar. And then we have set idioms or set expressions. These aren't that variable; they don't change that much. We have avoir besoin de, c'est, faire de, jouer à. All things that you use for French A1. We talk about to need, or what something is, or how the weather is, how to play an instrument. And the next deck, or I should say subdeck, is the French A1 negations. In this subdeck, we'll talk about common negations for French A1. The most important one, I think, is ne veut pas, the famous not negation. We also have other ways to negate. How do you negate in the reflexive verbs? How do you negate indefinite articles? Etc. etc. We move on to the French A1 prepositions and conjunctions. We talk about the basic prepositions that you need to know, the most common ones for French A1. But we also take a look at how to use prepositions with cities, with countries, with regions, states, and provinces, and how to use prepositions with transport and means of transport. The next deck is French A1 pronouns. We talk about demonstrative pronouns. It is, this is, these are, this or that. We have indefinite pronouns. We have tout le monde, everyone, everybody. We have subject pronouns. We have the famous je, tu, il, elle, on, nous, vous, and il, plural, elle, plural. Also, we have stress pronouns, something which I think you really need to study a lot on. We have the questions and interrogatives subject, how to ask questions in French. We look at closed questions, we look at open questions, and how to sort them from formal and informal manner. And finally, we have how to ask what is it. This is something or a question which I think you will use a lot, especially if you just start with learning French. And the very final deck is the French A1 verbs deck. We have the important irregular verbs which you need to know. We have reflexive verbs that you need to know. We have the verbs and time, le futur proche, le passé récent, le présent. We have the ER verbs, the regular ER verbs, the variations on that. We have the IR verbs, the regular ones, the variations on that, and the RE verbs, the regular ones and the variations on that. I've made a separate video on French A1 verbs because I think verbs are the most important part of any language. So you can take a look at that for a more in-depth analysis. I won't handle French A1 verbs that deeply in this video. So that's that for the overall overview of the course content. Now I'd like to show you, for my second point, a few decks. And we can go in on practical examples where I show you decks. But before I get started with that, I would like to remind you that I have another video called card types. Now, every sentence in my French A1 Anki deck has 4 cards. The first 2 I do recommend having, and the second 2, or I should say the last 2, are optional. And in that Anki explanation video, the card type explanation video, I will show you which ones you should use and how to switch between them. I don't want to pay that much attention to that in this video, though I will handle it briefly. So you can find all the videos and all the links in the descriptions, as well as the course content overview, the post for it. So let's get started with French A1 adjectives and adverbs. I'd like to show you this deck, how to make an adjective feminine in French. So we have over here the first card type, il est content et elle est ... and you have to know the answer.
Il est content et elle est contente.
So you can see that you have to add the E, and this changes the pronunciation by a lot. It's il est content, and then we have elle est contente. We have translation, we have an explanation area over here, we have the rules and some practical examples. So in this first card type, we really need to conjugate or need to fill in the blank, which is contente. Then we have le joli prince est avec la jolie fille.
Le joli prince est avec la jolie fille.
And again, we have the adjective agreement table. We have some explanations, so it's the same. And the overall assignment for you is you have the masculine adjective over here, but how do you make it feminine? And this deck constantly trains you in how to make it feminine. But if you ever forget, of course, there's the adjective agreement table for you as well. And then we have another example. We have petit versus petite.
Il y a un petit chien et une petite girafe.
So you have to make it feminine as well. And I like practical things, so you will handle practical adjectives.
Le gars, j'aime le.
And then we have the second card type. Again, please watch the video for more in-depth explanation. But you can type
Il
in
est
the correct.
content et elle est contente.
You can type in the correct answer, so it tests your writing abilities. And if you make a
Le joli
mistake,
prince est avec la jolie fille.
you get a correction.
Il y a un petit chien et une petite girafe.
Pardon that. And just skip ahead
Le garçon
quickly.
amusant et la. J'aime.
Then we have the third card type. Il est content et elle est contente. You have to translate to English.
Il est content et elle est contente.
It tests whether you know what the sentence is actually saying. This is an optional one.
Le jeu. Il y. Le.
And then we have the fourth one. You see the English sentence, but can you translate it French?
Il est content et elle est contente.
And it continues like this. So these are the 4 card types. Please take a look at the other video to have a more in-depth explanation for the 4 card types that I use and how to switch between them. So that's that for adjectives and adverbs. I'd like to go to articles and nouns, and I'd like to take another practical example. So I'll show you how to make nouns plural in French. So you can see that we have a sentence as well, but there's a blank area, so you have to know what it is.
Vous avez un journal pour moi? Non, mais vous pouvez acheter des journaux au magasin là-bas.
So you have the word journal, and then you have to make it plural. You have to make it journaux. So it tests you every time. You have a noun over here, you have a blank over here, but you see translation, so you know what it is that you need to translate, or pardon, that you need to change. And we have an explanation area over here as well with all of the rules. If you ever get confused, if you ever don't really know it, you can always have the explanation area to double check. You have maison. How do you make the plural form of maison? You have a picture of it as well. One house, 3 houses, it has 3 houses in it as well.
Mon frère a une maison, mais j'ai 3 maisons.
And the picture really adds value, I believe, because you associate things with it. There have been plenty of studies done on it that if you have a picture, you remember things a lot better. And again, if you want to hear it again, click on this.
Mon frère a une maison, mais j'ai 3 maisons.
And the final one I'd like to show you, how do you make the plural form of chat?
J'ai un chat et ma sœur a 3 chats.
And again, you can hear the audio file for it. So every time there's a really practical way for you to do an exercise. I like to go to idioms. I like to show you how to tell time in French. And this is what I wanted to show you. You see a clock, and then you have to know the correct answer.
Il est 10h15.
And we talk about the 12-hour clock, but we also have the 24-hour clock, which is this one. Il est 20. Do you know what il est 20?
Il est 23h.
Il est 23h, exactly. Just a small hint that I wanted to give you. So we have the 24-hour clock as well. So I talk about both. I believe this deck has 134 flashcards, so there's plenty of practice material for you. Then we go to a set idiom. Let's choose an important one, avoir besoin de. And you see it's the same concept. You see I need to study, and then you see a blank area.
J'ai besoin d'étudier.
I need to study. You can see an example that you can use it with nouns and you can use it with verbs. And to study, of course, is yes, it's a verb. You can see another example over here. Vous de vacances.
Vous avez besoin de vacances.
And this is a noun. You need a holiday. So you can see there's a lot of practical examples for you. Nous, and do you know what the answer is?
Nous avons besoin de volontaires.
So you can see that for every time there's a practical way for you to study things. Moving on to another deck. Let's go to negations. Let's go to an important one. Ne veut pas. How to say not. As you can see here, I have shown you one example here. Now this is not a negation in fact. You can see it's the best solution.
C'est la meilleure solution.
And there are other cards in this deck which show you the exact opposite, which show you ce n'est pas la meilleure solution. You can see here, I'm not ready.
Je ne suis pas prêt.
And then exactly this is the one. Ce n'est pas.
Ce n'est pas la meilleure solution.
So I show you an affirmative sentence, and then I show you a negation, so you can see the difference, the contrast between the two. And again, you have the explanation area over here as well. You have the link if you want to go back to the overall lesson. Plenty of practice material for you. The next one, which is prepositions and conjunctions. Let's do this one. I want to show you with cities, prepositions and cities. Je suis de Lille.
Je suis de Lille.
I am from Lille. So we have over here, I think really in a nutshell, you use a when you want to describe going to or being in a city, and you use de when you want to describe being, coming, or returning from the city. Elle vient, ... Nancy.
Elles viennent de Nancy.
Exactly. Elles viennent de Nancy. Ils vont à Caen.
Ils vont à Cannes.
Ils vont à Caen. And that's that for this deck. So you can see that there's a lot of practical examples, a lot of ways for you to practice. The pronouns one. Let's take an interesting one. I like to show you tout le monde. Je m'entends avec.
Je m'entends avec tout le monde.
I get along with everyone. I think this is a really easy deck, but I wanted to show you a very easy example as well, as it doesn't always have to be so tricky. This is a very simple way to say everyone in French, something that you'll use a lot. And again, I think the pictures really add value to it because you remember things a lot better. Tout le monde est d'accord.
Tout le monde est d'accord.
Exactly. So everything is always, I think, very practical, always with pictures, always with plenty of explanation for every lesson. You have to imagine there's explanations for every lesson in here as well. Questions and interrogatives. I'd like to show you this one actually, a very important one. Close and open questions. It's a big deck. Now you can see over here, tu aimes les voitures? Don't you? And if you see don't you, you should know that it's...
Tu aimes les voitures, n'est-ce pas?
Exactly, n'est-ce pas? And you can see here there's a big explanation part of it as well. You could go to it in general in your study books or on the website. You can read on it how to make closed questions. We talk about intonation with n'est-ce pas, with est-ce que, with inverted form, but we also have open questions. We have a nice table with the question words, and again we have the same part over here. Moving on, same part, n'est-ce pas. And then we have over here, what do you want? A nice picture with the question.
Qu'est-ce que vous voulez?
Qu'est-ce que vous voulez? And then sometimes I give a hint as well, because you don't always know which form to use. So I'll say, okay, où? Then if you know that there's an inversion, sont-ils?
Où sont-ils?
So you know that you have to invert. I think this is maybe one of even the most important decks. Sometimes there's a hint because it's sometimes impossible to know which form you have to use or which one you're expected to use. So I help you with that. And finally, the verbs one. I'll show you it briefly. Please take a look at the other video as well. Let's take a very easy one, regular ER verbs. Nous, and then dot dot dot, la plus grande armée d'Italie.
Nous commandons la plus grande armée d'Italie.
Commandons, ONS ending. Travaillez-vous?
Travaillez-vous dans un bureau?
You can see the endings for that as well. Please take a look at the other video for the A1 verbs as I go in a bit more in detail in that video. So that was that for the decks. Please check out the French A1 article. Finally, I'd like to just briefly show you one editing option. I talked about the two card types, the 4 card types that I have with the 2 ways to switch it. We have the beginner friendly one, which only has the first 2 that we saw, and then we have the normal one, which has the first 2 plus English translation plus French translation. Now the best way to switch between having 4 card types to having 2 card types is in the following way. We take this deck outside of the French A1 deck. After having done that, we go to Browse. We go to our French A1. We click Command A, Control A, right mouse click, go to Change Node Type, and go to Language Atlas Flashcards to Language Atlas Beginner Friendly. We choose OK, and now we have 2 2 card types per sentence. Now, if you're curious about why I did this, how I did this, if you want a bit more in-depth explanation, please go to the card type overview video where I explain this a bit more, where I give you a bit more of an in-depth explanation. I really think it's useful, but I just wanted to show you quickly how you can change from 4 cards per sentence to 2 cards per sentence. We have deleted the entire translation part. The last editing option that I want to show you is this one. You go to this icon over here, you click on options, and then you can change the amount of cards per day. I have it on 200. Normally I don't do 200, but it's just for the purpose of this video. Click on 50, you can do whatever you want. You can change it with this. We have reviews a day, maximum reviews a day. I also have a very high, just for the purpose of this video. You can do whatever you want. The most important thing is that whatever you do, you stick to it. So if you find yourself having difficulties, you're not that motivated, just drop the total amount. Creating a habit is really the most important thing. So that's that for this video. I've shown you which different decks there are. I've shown you practical examples. You can click on the description and it will enlarge and you can see all the links inside of it. I've put in the link for the overall A1 deck, so you can see where to get it, where you can see the course content again if you want to. I've put in a link for the 4 card types overview, which I really recommend that you watch it, as I go in a lot of detail on the card types that I have and which one I use. And I've put in a link for the French A1 verbs video, where I go into a bit more detail on the French A1 verbs. So that's that for this lesson. If you have any more questions, please let me know and I will try my best. I will answer each and every one of them. And that's that. Thank you for watching. Have a good day and best of luck on your French journey. Goodbye.